I'm Scott Safer, and I'm with the Authors at Google program. And today it's my pleasure to introduce Chef Pierre Thaim. Chef Pierre is here from Le Grand Dakar in Brooklyn, his restaurant, and he has a cookbook called Yolele, which is the first cookbook dedicated to the food of Senegal. Nock Waxman, owner of Kitchen Arts and Letters, gave his cookbook a rave review. He says, "We would have to be grateful for almost any new contribution to the too sparse literature of African food. But restaurateur Pierre Thaim's book on the richly appealing food of his native Senegal is beyond the call. Fresh, lively, and intelligent." So without further ado, Chef, thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Turn this on. Thank you for inviting me. I just need to make a quick precision. It's the first cookbook made in America, the first English version of a Senegalese cookbook, but there are a couple of French versions and there are a couple of Senegalese editions as well. So that said, I really wanted to write this book because I think Senegalese food is a great absent of in the bookstores, the cookbooks. We have so much to offer, I believe, Senegalese cuisine and in extension African cuisine. And I believe also that it's the next cuisine that is to be explored in New York. I've been working in the restaurant industry for over 20 years now. I arrived from Senegal with different goals in mind when I was coming. I was coming as a physics and chemistry student, and I was about to go to Ohio to finish my studies at this college, this tiny college in Cleveland. Got stuck in New York, needed a job, started in the restaurant industry like most immigrants do, and I just happened to love it. It was something I would have never thought about while I was in Senegal, even though in Senegal I had this love of food growing up. I was spending a lot of time reading my mother's cookbooks. She had this amazing collection of French cookbook, the Larousse Gastronomique. So I would spend time going through her photographs. But it was never an option to cook in Senegal because for cultural reasons, men don't cook in Senegal. It's not like a man activity, it's a woman's activity. So the only man I saw cooking in Senegal was my godfather, who was a Vietnamese immigrant who had he was part of the wave of Vietnamese immigrants who moved to Senegal when in the early 60s, mid 60s actually, after the war started in Indochine and the French. Vietnam, like Senegal, is a French colonial country, so they came with a group of refugees because of that connection with the colonial empire. So my uncle happened to be an excellent cook, but he was cooking Southeast Asian cuisine, and he inspired me as well. Him and my mom's cookbooks were like the first inspiration and the first connection I had with cooking. So I arrived in New York, hoping to finish my chemistry studies, and I ended up in a restaurant. And gradually, that's when I started to see men cooking, and that was an activity that was actually acceptable here. And I started to read more about it and to get more into it and to also explore the restaurant world of New York, which is the food capital of the world. So it was really an amazing awakening to me. And gradually, as years and years went by and keep on working in different restaurants, different experiences, which I talk about in my book, I realized that there was something really missing in this whole universe of cooking, which was the food from Africa. It wasn't really represented in New York, in America, and that was really terrible because I know of great ingredients and great food and great food culture that where I came from. It's an old and ancient and food culture, and I thought, I have to just bring my contribution. And I started researching. I started to go back in Senegal, working with my mom and getting those old family recipes and all those been gathering for like 4 years, and I've been writing them down. And this is, in a nutshell, what you see in this book is what you'd call contemporary Senegalese cuisine. Recipes from my background, from the past, from the influences that Senegal has because of the contacts we had with different cultures. We have been colonized by the French for over 500 years, and so it's obviously a big part of our cuisine as well. We have been colonized in the south of Senegal, where I'm from, by the Portuguese as well, which is so another strong cooking culture that influenced a part of Senegal, that influenced even our language in the south of Senegal. That's where I grew up speaking Portuguese Creole, while in the north, people speak French in Senegal. And we also have been influenced recently by the Vietnamese, obviously. The north, we have the Moroccans, who are our neighbors in a sense, after the Sahara Desert. So their influence is also very strong, even though we believe that we influenced them and we taught them how to do the couscous. And you see our couscous recipe is based on millet, and their couscous recipe is based on wheat. The only difference is the grain. And the grains are also a strong influence in our cuisine. We have, Africa has a great diversity of grains, of healthy grains. And with the millet, we also have, in Senegal in particular, we have the millet, we have the sorghum, and we have a tiny grain called fonio, which I believe will be in the future one of the most talked about grains because of its qualities. It is extremely nutritious. And not only for its nutritious aspect, it's also delicious. It's an ancient grain that's been cultivated for over 5,000 years throughout Africa, and all the way in the south of the Nile in Egypt, where they considered it a sacred grain. In West Africa, in Mali, this grain is called the seeds of the universe. And for those different reasons, because of the nutritional aspect of it, and the fact that this grain grows in the harshest of conditions. It grows in the semi-arid area of Senegal and Mauritania and Mali. It grows within 2 months. It's one of the fastest maturing grain that exists. So for all these different reasons, I believe the future of this grain is bright, and now it's coming back. It had disappeared during the colonial time because the French didn't know the grain and they didn't have any use for it really, so they didn't realize how much it had to offer. They came and imported in Senegal other ingredients because they had a whole empire that made sense for political reasons. They would import rice from Southeast Asia, even though the south of Senegal was growing a rice that's different. And they imported, Senegal became a peanut growing region for the French Empire because peanut oil was also big in French cuisine, you know. And so then grains like fonio and millet, they disappeared. There was no use for it. You could see it in rural areas. And thank God now it's coming back, and those grains are much healthier than all those processed food that the French had to offer. And the versatility of that grain you'll see in this book. There's like 5 or 6 recipes, and you can also expand and adapt to your liking. Those grains are coming back, as I was saying. So that said, the other reason why I wanted to write this book is also, you're going to see it's an intimate cookbook. It's my family portraits. You see a lot of portraits in the book by a wonderful photographer, a friend of mine, who came with me a couple of times in Senegal to visit the village where my family is from. And most of the portraits are portraits of women because it's a tribute to those women who taught us, who kept that tradition of bringing the food to our table. I should say to our bowl, because we eat around a bowl too in Senegal. We have a tradition of eating around. It's a cultural experience when you eat. It's not just coming and eating like a fast food type of meal. When dinner time or lunch time, the family comes together. It's the time where we come together around the bowl. There's a certain symbolic that the circle of the bowl means, and everyone, the children have a certain, there's a way that they have to eat. You have to eat in front of you, the portion in front of you, and the mother is the one who distributes the meat around the bowl. So all those different, cultural aspects make the eating experience not just feeding yourself, but it's feeding your soul as well. And it's a time where we share conversations, and we share experiences, and we just share time together. It's not just an individual plate, everyone eating together. And I try to bring that experience through my book, and in my restaurant too. I try to also bring that cultural aspect of Senegal. So, thus said, well, here I can show you some of the pictures. This is a black-eyed pea salad, but the picture right before that was the village where my family is from. That was this one right here. And you see, all these women are my aunts and my grandmother and my cousins, and they are the ones who are the reason why this book is written. And that's really one of the main reason why I wanted to talk about this. And I'll have to talk about another ingredient as well that just comes to my mind, is the palm oil. The palm oil is an ingredient that's been getting a terrible reputation, terrible press in the Western world, and it's been very unfair, because palm oil is actually now considered to be nature's gift to the world. It's extremely rich in beta-carotene. It's now believed to have anti-cancerogenous qualities, and it's been used in Africa for generations, for thousands of years. That's the oil we've been using. There's a difference between palm oil and palm kernel oil now. The palm oil that you see being used in Africa is the one that has that reddish color, and because of the high level of carotene, that one is actually healthy. That's the one you want to use. That's the one we cook with. The palm kernel oil is the seed of the palm oil that's cracked and extracted the oil out of it. We don't use it as cooking oil. Actually, it's high saturated. It's the palm oil itself. The red palm oil has no cholesterol at all. So those are the differences that one needs to know. Palm oil, you're going to see quite a few recipes that ask for the use of palm oil, and that's oil that's recommended. Do not believe what people say about palm oil. It's actually an extremely healthy oil that you should use. That's highly recommended. So if you have any questions as well, I'll be happy to answer.
I was talking with a coworker that's from Africa, and I just remember we went out to eat at I can't remember what restaurant, and he mentioned that what was interesting to him about palm oil is that when he was a kid, he would always go to his mother to the market, and they would spend a lot of time picking out the best the best palm oil from those whatever coconut-like things that they come from. And he said it was kind of strange to him to see them selling just bottles of palm oil here in the States. He was a little bit unsure of their quality. So I'm kind of curious, is the palm oil quality here very good? Or do they go through a lot of trouble and mix, have the best palm oil and not have any rotten, palms or?
Well, yeah, there's, it's easy to. It's like the olive oil, for instance. You see extra virgin olive oil, many bottles say extra virgin olive oil, but the quality is different. Mm-hmm. The palm oil, the redder the one is, the better, actually. You have to look for the color. Sometimes what they do is they dilute it with regular vegetable oil and that's, unfortunately, that happens quite a lot. but you can't really tell the difference if you don't really look at the color. When it's diluted, it's less red. It starts to turn until a little more orange, you know. And the palm oil also, it gets thick. It gets really thick. You have to, if it's really good palm oil, when you buy it, you can see it's very dense, you know. So you need to heat it up to have it liquefy a little bit better.
I see.
But the good palm oil is definitely, you can see it by the color, you can taste it by touching it. You see the thickness of it and the smell of it. It has that nutty, really.
Is there any chance that it would become rancid? Like I know olive oil has this problem; it goes rancid fairly easily if it's exposed to sunlight or.
Well, you have to no, you shouldn't have it on sunlight. That's true. You should have it like kept not in a refrigerator, but like somewhere not too hot as well. In your shelf in the kitchen is fine, really. It has a kind of a long shelf life. You can keep it for a couple of months easily, and there's no problem with using it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks so much for coming.
Yeah.
I guess my question is, do you feel that your background in physics and chemistry has had any relation to your cooking? I mean, are most of your recipes more traditional Senegalese recipes, or do you also maybe not go as far as molecular gastronomy, but how does that background interplay?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it really helped me approach it from a different angle. It wasn't just coming and get a job. I was understanding the reactions in the cooking process. I was understanding it better than probably another guy who just had a job and never went to school for that. And that's what really made me, connect with it and like say, oh wow, this is fantastic. I mean, I never thought of it this way. I never saw cooking as chemistry before I started to cook myself. Before that, I was in university. I was just in the labs and studying all those reactions and emulsion and all that without knowing that applying it would be delicious. So cooking became, just an extension of my studying.
Can you talk a bit about, is it usually an appetizer, an entree, a dessert? Do foods come in courses? Are foods generally shared?
No, it's not an appetizer. You have most of the appetizers that you see in the book would be considered more like street food or snacks. Things that, like the black-eyed pea fritters, for instance, that would be something that you would see in every street corner of Dakar or of West Africa. Or actually, that particular dish, you'd see it in Brazil because it traveled. Akara, it became acarajé in Brazil through the slave trade. So that's not the same process of eating. Here in the restaurant, I serve it as an appetizer. But in Senegal, in the traditional culture, you would see it more like maybe there's a celebration, for instance, a name birthing or a wedding or something. You would see it as it's offered before the main course. But it's not, the meal is not broken like the Western way. Even the dessert, some of the desserts are really snacks. It's not that you'd have, a rice pudding after the meal. The rice pudding you could have it at 5 o'clock before lunch even. The kids would have it, as a snack at any time, or even at night time before going to bed. So the time we eat and the way we eat, the process is completely different than the way it happens in the Western world, and that's also something that we have to take into consideration. Like let's say the tea, for instance. There's a very important aspect of Senegalese food is the tea, the ataya we call it. You have tea at any time throughout the day. Every time someone comes into your house, he's been offered tea, and the tea comes in three cups. You have the first cup is very strong, the second cup much milder, and the third cup is sweet and has lots of mint in it, and it just has to come this way. And it's a green tea. The first cup, because it's strong, it has lots of caffeine in it. Sometimes people skip it. because of that aspect, but it's still being offered to you. It has to come through that process. Why? Because it allows people to spend that time together. It takes time to make that tea. It's not just brew it and serve it. The guy who's making the tea is kind of the specialist of the house. Each house has a specialist, and he has to make a foam on each tiny cup before serving it. And to make that foam, he has to pour from one cup to another cup the tea, and he has to pour it high up. That's why he needs to be a specialist. He can't pour it around. And just go back and forth until each cup has the thickness of foam, and then serve the tea in that with the foam topping it. And if the foam is not topping it, you're getting those glances like, where'd you learn how to make tea? It doesn't, it's just a whole cultural thing. But while the tea is being made, people are sitting together and they're chatting and they're talking about serious things or less serious things or cracking jokes. It's just that moment that you have, and that's every household has it every day. At least once every day you have that moment where everyone sits around and gets the tea. I mean, it's expected. Even if you don't get your tea, you ask. You can get into a household, the first thing you ask is, where are we at? That means at which level of the tea you are. Are you serving the first one, the second one, the third one? So it's just part of it. It's just one of those, the same as eating around the bowl. Having the tea is also part of the whole experience of having a dinner in Senegal. And it's not only limited to Senegal, obviously, Mali, Mauritania, because those borders were recently created, but the culture is completely the same, in ways of eating. And the ingredients also, they vary slightly when you leave the north of Senegal, going to the south, going to Guinea, because the ingredients vary. But mostly Senegalese food, it's a lot of seafood, as you'll realize in the book, because of the coastal, it's like coastal, it's the Atlantic coast. So shrimp, mussels, lobsters, all those are like part of our diet, our regular diet. And the grains I talked about, sorghum, millet, fonio, and also rice, obviously, from the south of Senegal. Rice was actually cultivated in the south of Senegal over 1,500 years before Christ, and that's something that people don't realize, that rice is also an indigenous. It's not imported from Asia. It was cultivated there, and many slaves from that part of Senegal was taken because of their knowledge of how to grow rice, and they were taken to South Carolina and North Carolina for that, technology, rice growing technology.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for coming, Chef. If I was going to add one ingredient to my pantry to try some of the recipes in your book, what would that be?
A healthy ingredient would be fonio. Now you can find it if you go to the uptown in Harlem or the Bronx. All those African stores sell it, or in Brooklyn on Fulton Street, there's a whole little Senegal area that sells that too. Why fonio? Because it's just the healthiest, I would think, out there, and it's easy to prepare. So you won't have to. We have a saying that goes, "Fonio never embarrasses the cook," because fonio is really just steaming, water, salt, and then you can even cook it in your microwave. After that, anything you want to accompany it with, it could be made with a salad, like we have a salad, a tabouleh, which is a Lebanese, North African influence. I didn't talk about the Lebanese in Senegal, but there's a big community of Lebanese as well. I'm not sure when they started coming, but I was born and they were there, Lebanese and Syrian, and their restaurants are all over Dakar. So that dish, that fonio tabouleh, is a Lebanese influenced dish. But you can do many other dishes with fonio. It can just be a side with any sauce or any stew. So that's an ingredient that I would highly recommend. It's no gluten as well, so that's for people who are gluten intolerant. It's low fat. It's just one ingredient, I would say. And then a second one, I would say palm oil, because it's also a healthy oil. And A third one, okra. Okra. I love okra. Okra is one of those ingredients, as the black eyed peas, for instance, that came to Americas through the slave trade as well from West Africa, and they influenced the whole southern cuisine, Louisiana cuisine like jambalaya, gumbo. Gumbo, as a matter of fact, is a word in Wolof for okra. You know, in the French they call it gombo, but they had that from obviously from the Wolof word. Wolof is the main language in Senegal. So gumbo, I was saying, which is okra, which is one of my favorite ingredients, was imported to the Americas. It became the dish that we know, gumbo, and I have a chapter in the book, as a matter of fact, that's called The Middle Passage, and that has the original recipes of those books before they were transported to America. And gumbo, we call it supu kanja in this book. The only difference between the gumbo from Senegal and the gumbo from Louisiana is the palm oil that's being used in Senegal. And the one in Louisiana, oftentimes you also have sausages inside the gumbo. And we don't have it. Sausages, for cultural reasons, Senegal is mainly a Muslim country, for like about 95% Muslims, 5% Catholics and animists. And but when you go to Senegal, that's something you would not really notice, because when you say Muslim here, you oftentimes expect it to look like the Arab Muslim, which is Senegalese Islam is very very tolerant. First of all, you have a country where, you know, when Christian holidays happen, first of all, everyone celebrates it, and Christians have a special dish that they bring to the Muslims. And when Muslims' holidays happen, there's the same thing too. When they slaughter the lamb for Tabaski, every Muslim household has to have a cut of lamb for the Christian neighbors or for any Christian families. So that's been happening like that for generations, that build that tolerance through the food. And so we also known for that. You know, you're Christian, you expected Muslims to say, oh, are we going to have angalach soon? Angalach is that dish that it's a dish based with millet and baobab fruit and peanuts. Peanuts is another ingredient that was imported, actually.
What did the men in your family think about you?
That's a good question. It took me a while to tell them. It took me a while because I guess I was dealing with it, you know, within me. It was really, I have a whole, like by the end of my book, I talk about it actually. See, your parents in Senegal, they expect you they were expecting me to become an engineer. They expect you to be, you know, a lawyer, to be something, you know, to hopefully work for Google. No, but when you're a man, there's no way, to even dream about announcing them that you're a cook. I'm a cook in New York. I mean, I thought my parents would just go crazy, you know, especially the way I became a cook. I came to New York, and I came with the last dollars that my father was able to gather so he could send me to start paying for my school. And the first couple of days, I lost the whole amount. So it was a matter of survival. I had to find a job. And the first job that opened was this restaurant. And from working on the restaurant, you know, I started to get closer to the chefs, and I saw that this was a great thing. But it took me a couple of years. At the time, whenever I was talking to my parents, I would just like turn around the bush, but never say really what I was doing. Oh, I have a job here and this, earlier I'm saving money, yeah, I'm going back to school soon. You know, it was a lie until really when I just said, you know, I had to. And it was easy. It was easy when I said that. I was like, my mom was, you know, she loved to cook. She loved food, and she was just very supportive. And then I guess she had that chat with my dad, because my dad also he never gave me those glances. And the only reaction that's funny that I had was from a cousin of mine when I thought my parents knew already. So he found out, and he called me, and he was like, I can't believe you're a cook, you know. And I was like, well, you know, it's just the way it is here. But that was, you know, he was laughing on the phone. But now, you know, now it's accepted, and now, you know, they see the book, they accepting the whole thing. And it's evolving now. Men are getting more into cooking. A lot of men are traveling, and it's the first job they get, usually when they're in France or here. They're studying as a dishwasher, and then they studying either get into it, go back to school, and they become cooks. And it's an honorable profession.
I was just going to ask what kind of cooking you did when you were working in restaurants when you first came to New York, and whether any of that food has influenced the stuff that you do at your current restaurant.
Okay, well, the first restaurant I was working was Garvin's, which was like a contemporary American restaurant, like in the West Village, it was located. And then after that, I worked in a French bistro, so it was the classic bistros. So that became my first, my first strong influences. And then I decided to really go back and get into the classics. So it was the French that was my basis of cooking. I went to going through all the Julia Child collection, and then I worked in a multi-ethnic cuisine with this restaurant called Boom, where the ambition was to explore the world of food. The emphasis was Southeast Asia, which I had a background with my uncle. I was spending a lot of summer vacation with my uncle from Vietnam. So that was a restaurant where I really got into so ethnic food was the thing that I got into much longer. But my first experiences were American and French bistro. So that's how I got into cooking, my first steps into professional cooking. And then obviously later on I decided to explore Senegalese cuisine, which is something I had from growing up, but exploring the recipes and all that was just a different approach coming from this experience of professionalism, from the French experience, from the American experience, and also from my background in chemistry. Decided to really just break down those recipes and restudy them and write them down because they weren't written down before then.
Any more questions? Thank you for coming.
Thank you.